Okay, so this is my defining injury research presentation. I did injuries in collegiate women's volleyball. My article information, the article name was Injuries in Collegiate Women's Volleyball, a 4-year retrospective analysis. And I just got it by going to Google Scholar and I typed in injury volleyball players descriptive analysis and I searched until I found one I liked. The population study, there's 20 collegiate D1 women's volleyball players, and all of the athletes had previous experience competing in volleyball prior to their collegiate career. And then that third bullet point is just like the statistics of like their average age, height, and weight through all 4 years. And I'm assuming that changes because new personnel come, and people graduate and new people come in. So the injury definition was any damage to a body part occurred during volleyball, resistance training, or other conditioning related activities which interfered with training and or competition. And then injuries were further classified as acute or overuse or contact or no contact. The acute was defined as any injury resulting from a single identifiable trauma or event. Overuse was injuries resulting from repeated microtrauma absent of a single identifiable event. Contact was a result of colliding with a teammate, opposing player, or an object. And non-contact was injuries occurring in the absence of contact with another player or object. I found this definition interesting because it doesn't talk about time lost. It just says interfered with training and or competition. Meaning that they did report injuries that limited them and not just took them out of their sport. So if they had to get taped or if they had to modify a movement, that was also reported, not just if they were unable to play, because players do play through injuries. And so I found that interesting because it was more all-encompassing of all the injuries. Strengths and limitations. The limitations of the studies were athletes were not examined in the months of June and July during the summertime. But I found interesting because they could have gotten an injury during that time, which could then affect their preseason, or they could have recorded an injury during that time that was already pre-existing. So that could contribute why they found that preseason injuries were more common. Also, it wasn't the same people every year, so there wasn't really a consistent group of people to see why one year had more injuries more than the other, because people are all different. So I found that interesting. And then it didn't specify which program or school they were following. It said that their head coach and university director was the same, but it never said what school they were at or what program they were following. Like it just said that they followed the same one for 4 years. So that was weird. The strengths was the head coach and the university of directors of sports medicine remained the same for the duration of the study. This is helpful because coaching style can affect injuries, I believe, in how hard they work their players and how they run practices. I also like that the injury rate was normalized to the number of athletes and exposures. So it was expressed as injuries per 100 exposure, 1,000 exposures. So per 1,000 exposures, how many injuries were in that time? Kind of gives you an idea and like averages it out. They also discussed the comparison to other studies, and it might not be accurate because of the definitions. So they gave some room saying that our study is more individualized because of how specific our definition is. And lastly, they expressed different factors that contributed to preseason injuries, kind of like in complexity maps. They mentioned stress and moving away from home and starting school and increasing training going through summer into the preseason. So they took in other factors, which I found is really helpful. If anyone has questions, but you don't. Thank you.
He has like a stroller, walkers, car seats with medical devices.